And maybe we close this door for light, and then we open up that door for air. You think? So it's going to be less tinted.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's one of those breakers that says lights.
Yeah, I realize. I'm not saying you should. It makes sense. This is
Hey, Guillermo, leave one of those backlights on.
Okay.
Just
I can't find it like that.
I said breaker.
Oh, like straight breaker.
There we go.
Great.
Sorry, their electrician screwed up their wiring today, so YOLO. Sweet. Welcome to oh my god.
Okay. Welcome to
It's not Develop Denver conference. Welcome to DenverScript. Any first timers?
Like half the crowd.
Which is funny because you're all like on this side too. Which, all right.
It's like a wedding. First timers family. Return family.
Awesome. Welcome. These son of a biscuit. It's back. So these things are not possible without sponsors. So I want to thank them, like Co-Talent. If you don't know, that's where you're at right now. They were even kind enough to buy a brand new projector, and it has a laser pointer. So I'm super stoked about that. So thank you, Co-Talent. And also, if you don't know what they do, they find you jobs. So they're really good at it too. So if you're in the job market or need to hire, talk to them. I guarantee you won't regret it. Sponsoring the food is Go Spot Check. That's what I was looking for. So it'll make it really hype it up.
What does Go Spot Check do?
We're a real-time data collection thing that
I love this elevator.
I had this memorized and I keep forgetting it. Basically, it's an app for people to do auditing. So like Jim Beam, they make sure bottles on the top shelf and all that stuff. So they send people to a spot to check it. Go to spot check. Yeah. There you go. Also, Develop Denver. God damn it. DenverScript is also an open collective, so we have people that actually give us nonprofit donations so we can do some cooler things for you guys here in the future, or if we drop a sponsor, we don't have to pay for food out of our own pocket like we've done in the past. Randori, awesome company that does security testing. One of our co-organizers works for them, so they gave us some money, so thank you, Randori. From investors. We give away three-month subscriptions, which is like worth $100. If you don't know what Front Masters is, it's a online learning hub for front-end things, and it's always like the best content. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an expert, like there's always something on there you can learn. So stay tuned. We will be giving away 3 of those. Guillermo will handle that later. Also, our own collective sponsors. These are the people that do this. So, Garrett Dawson, me, Kylie, who is speaking tonight. Thank you. And Randori would do it one time. But it was a big one time, so I really, really appreciate that. So, we can talk about own collective at some point over beers after this, but this is the general gist of what donations go towards, helping us out, the little buffer, paying for the accounts, what have you, make some swag for you guys, like these sweet stickers. They're all up here, so get some. I'm really selling it, aren't I?
Totally.
Great. So this is a section we call What's Going On in JS Land. So anything you've seen in like the last month or two that's got you excited about JavaScript? I don't care if it's a library or some aha moment you had in JavaScript this last couple months. We want to hear it.
All right, so let's kick this thing off. Normally what we do is we talk about new dev tools that have come out. Unfortunately, we meet once a month, and Chrome releases their new versions every 6 weeks. So, you know, every now and then you get a meeting like this one where we have no new dev tools to go over. What are you guys excited about? It can be literally anything. So, security patches? Okay. Well, it can be literally anything from as broad as, hey, I heard this thing is being introduced to the language, to as specific as, oh, this framework I has worked with has this thing. Or if not, any personal high five moments that you had, like really exciting, something that, you know, doesn't have to be new to the language or the industry, but it can be new to you. Or like, oh, I was working on this thing, and I just figured out this thing, and you were excited about it. Yes, Matthew.
Am I in trouble? Node 12 is out. They also have a experiment. They also, I don't know what this really means because I don't know shit about WebAssembly, but apparently they now have support in experimental features for WebAssembly modules. So if you're into WebAssembly, sure you're excited.
What else?
Still the LTS.
What's that?
10 still the LTS.
10 is still the LTS. 11, I forget when that goes into LTS. I've been checking daily though.
What else are you guys excited about? Anything at all? Yes.
I don't know what it is, but I was just watching something on YouTube from like Google I/O. Private variables for classes.
And the what?
Private variables for classes.
Oh yeah. Private variables for classes is going to be a
Like
thing.
real, actual private variables.
Mm-hmm. That's in the proposal stages, right? For to see the.
I think it's in stage 0 still, but yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Oh, and what was her name again?
Bevan.
Bevan just got a front-end master's trial subscription. So as you mentioned, front-end master's is a really cool site. You can go and check out all different kinds of course content from beginners to really senior level deep dives. The courses go from like a few hours to like 10 plus. They're really set up like as if it was like an actual like course that you were attending. It's about $30 a month, and you get a free like 3-month trial membership. So it's like about $100 right there. So thank you. Who else has got stuff they're excited about? Again, it doesn't need to be new. It's like CBS reruns. If you haven't seen it, it's new to you. Yeah.
Especially, it's like just a Chrome request network tab.
Mm-hmm.
You can, I didn't realize this, we have a bunch of weird curl bolt-ons to our PHP, like flags and options and stuff. You can actually copy as curl command, right-click on the network request, and it does it the way the browsers do.
Oh,
So
that's super
a
cool.
bunch of weird curl things that your PHP backend developers are doing, you can just mimic it without having to reproduce it.
That's super cool. I completely forgot about that.
Just saying I'm going to pseudo write all these and I look up the answers and links to things later. So don't be worried.
No, if you the network tab, if you right click on any XHR request, it'll give you the equivalent curl request that you can just drop in, right?
Yeah, it's like, there's like 4 or 5 different ways of copying it. It's like copy as curl.
Yeah, super cool. Yeah. Nice. What else? Again, that's been around for a bit, but it's, you know, something a lot of us probably didn't know about on top of our heads. Anything else like that that you guys have recently run into or worked with in the language and the tools framework? Yeah.
I said probably has existed also for a while, but I just learned about snippets today and the sources tab.
Yeah.
So you don't have to like use it or JavaScript.
Can you talk a little more about like what they are and like how they helped you out?
Just kind of like writing code in the console, but you don't lose all of your data every single time.
Right.
It saves it, so I really don't have those.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, code snippets. If you haven't used them, they're super helpful, and you can like actually like indent it how you want to and put new lines. You don't have to like hold shift when you do it. And, yeah, pretty neat. Yeah.
Just have you looked into like setting breakpoints and watching variables change and all that stuff too?
No.
Setting breakpoints on like set a breakpoint on a for loop, you can step into different phases of or different iterations of the for loop and watch your variables change every single iteration.
Yeah, totally. Great point. So in your code snippets, you can debug them in exactly the same way as you debug like live code that you're running off. So yeah, so you have all the same benefits of Chrome DevTools when you do them in snippets versus just like dropping it in the console where it's just kind of fire and forget. So yeah, awesome. Good tag team there, guys. Yeah.
I discovered Open API in the last month.
Open what?
Open API.
Mhm.
Writing all by API scripts and Swagger.
Oh, sweet.
And Open API is awesome.
Nice.
We use like English.
Cool. Yeah, and then like as Matt said, for these other things, for example, like Open API and these kinds of things, what we'll do is, as you guys think about more things that you're excited about, we'll post all of this to the comments section of the meetup page for today's meetup. And then for anything that has a relevant like link or docs or whatever that can be linked off, we'll drop that in there as well, so it'll be a little more enhanced than we have right now. So, what else? Yeah.
I guess it's kind of piggybacking on like how we've been around a while, and everyone else knows.
Sure.
Getting really into the React options in Google Chrome. I've just been like relying on millions and millions of console logs forever, and finally I realized, oh, there's an add-on for this. Now I can just check out all of my props and everything right here.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
And it saved me plenty of time this week. So.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah, that's huge. If you're doing React development, that's huge. And if you're doing it with Redux as well, you can see the full state of your store at any given time. Really, really neat stuff.
You talking about just the regular React developer tools?
But yeah, if you haven't seen it before, the first time you use it, it's mind-blowing, right? You're like, oh my God, it's already. Just wait for it.
But not allowed to swear.
Is that like the swear bleep button?
Otherwise, it's swagger.
Thank you, Tom Hepburn.
I call them DevTools. All right, who else? Anyone else got anything they're excited about? How about a high five moment? Like something you were like really working through and then it like finally came together. Yes.
We managed to get TypeScript definitions out of GraphQL APIs or GraphQL schemas.
Yep.
That was a nice little win.
Yeah, totally. When you see the two sides sort of come together like that, it's very rewarding.
Like we have all the types, why can't we just use this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very
Still
cool.
some bugs, but
Well, you know, everybody has bugs.
I missed that one.
Huh? TypeScript types, being able to port them over to your GraphQL schema or
TypeScript types from GraphQL.
yeah, sorry, the other way around.
We have a whole blog post on it.
Yeah, and that'd be great also too. If you could send us over what that post is, then we could drop it on like right under this like little reference.
Yeah.
GraphQL schema. Sweet. Yeah.
Maybe from a couple months ago, we thought, but Cypress IO is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
It saves massive time.
What's your favorite part about Cypress when you used it?
I don't really have to think, it just kind of does it.
Cool. And then for those that don't know, what is Cypress? 90-second elevator pitch.
It is like, it's a testing tool for like integration tests, and it runs on an Electron. And it'll just walk through everything, it'll keep a little list of every single step it's taking, it'll take snapshots, so if something doesn't work as expected, you can literally go to that snapshot and go, oh, because obviously this thing isn't working, and then you gotta figure it out.
And you're talking, it does like UI snapshots for you too, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so you guys are starting to mess around. Anybody starting to mess around with integration testing? Cypress is a cool thing to check out. It's been built on sort of like the learnings and stumbles of past integration testing frameworks, and it's got some really cool stuff. Because it's got also, it doesn't have like almost like a time travel ability where you can like go back in steps and see where it was, and then see the state of everything, and then move forward again and stuff like that.
You have like 1,000 tests, like you can always hop back up to like the 5th one and see like, oh, this is what
The state of the world at that time. Yeah.
Time, and carry on. I don't think it's for browsers other than Chromium yet. I know that's high on their team, but hopefully that comes out obviously soon.
Awesome. Cool. Anyone else? Yeah, it's Chromium.
Is that a good or bad?
That's great because that means Microsoft has given up.
Yeah.
Is there any more editors for Chromium anymore? Is that not
Pretty much you have whatever was a Gecko for Firefox.
Firefox.
But Firefox has very small issues in comparison to Microsoft.
Cool.
Or there's also on the Blink, they branched up, did Blink, came back to Chromium. So pretty much Gecko and Chromium and whatever Opera uses. But that's Russia.
Okay. From Russia was was. Cool. All right. Well, so that being said, one of the things we noticed actually it was good. We had like a slow trickle of a lot of different things today that people were working on. One of the biggest things that what we really like about this, you see like all different stuff that people raise their hand about, both older and newer things that people are working on. As you heard, sort of people raising their hand and suggesting stuff that they've been working on, something they've seen. We're probably going to end a little early tonight because we only have one talk tonight. So feel free as you're like getting more pizza or drinking some beer, like chat with each other about like stuff that you found interesting or things that you've been working on, right? Because like the whole idea is that we're all like a community that comes together here. We only ever have time for one or two speakers, but there's a lot of people with good stuff that they've been working through. Even if you're a junior and you just discovered something cool, the person next to you might be able to get some help from that. So yeah, so share that stuff with each other. For the other two front-end masters giveaways, so for those of you who are on the wedding first-timer side of the aisle, we do this every time. The first person to raise their hand gets a front-end master's trial membership, and the other two we raffle at the end. So what we'll do is everybody that raised their hand and participated, come see us at the end, and then we'll give away the other two. So if you want to get front-end masters and you want to like learn some more stuff about whatever from a platform that you know is a trusted, really good one, just come back next month and raise your hand first, and you can get one for sure. Sweet. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
He just taught you how to cheat. Cool. Is there anyone that has jobs they'd like to announce? Oh yeah,
It's really hard to see whoever's sitting there.
I don't know. It kind of looks like, oh damn, they know
Sorry.
who I am now. Kind of looks like one of those things for masking the identity of someone.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyone have job announcements?
No one's hiring me.
Oh, it's right. No hire May. Got it.
It's an industry thing. No hiring.
No, no once, twice. Okay. So call for speakers. Anybody who wants to speak, let us know. Like, even if you're a junior, like, it's always good to speak and start getting out there. Like, pick a subject you don't know anything about and you want to give everyone a crash course in or something like that. Like, don't learn from your mistakes that you've learned through it. So, I mean, it can be on anything that you're excited about. So, definitely hit us up if you have an idea for a talk, and we'll send you the form to fill out.
And we really mean that too. We have the format of a short talk and a long talk. The short talk's only like 8 to 10 minutes. It can be on any topic that you find interesting. It's sometimes we have mid-level or senior level people do the short talk, but it's a really good venue if you're a junior level person. You want to get like used to just presenting in front of a technical crowd. And keep in mind, all joking aside, when our hands went up, right, we had like half of the group as first timers. Actually, how many here would identify as a junior developer? It's a lot of hands, right? So if one of you puts together a short talk on a relatively introductory topic, chances are at least 30 to 50% of the audience will probably benefit from that, right? So if you do want to get experience doing that, you want to put together, let us know. We can help you pick a topic. We can help you put together the outline of the talk, and also develop Denver. Are you going to mention develop Denver?
You go for it.
Yeah. What?
Isn't that where we're at right now?
Yeah, exactly. Also develop Denver, which is not what we're doing here. We're doing DenverScript, contrary to Matt's saying it several times. Develop Denver is actually also putting together CFP workshops for people that want to do talks at conferences, and they help you put together how to put together a proposal, how to work on your talk, and even if you don't think you're going to go and do it at a conference, it's also a great place to get some experience if you just want to do a talk at a meetup. Separately, Develop Denver is August, I think, 16th and 17th. It is a community-driven conference that is obviously here in Denver. And there we go. It's a really great time. If you guys have not been before it, I can't recommend it enough. It is
73 or 78 days, 13 hours, 20 minutes, and 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1.
It's a really, really great conference. It's pretty much only people from Denver. So instead of maybe like flying to Salt Lake City for a React conference or something, you're here. You see some really great speakers from your own town. And people you'll be running back into at other meetups and things like that. I can't recommend it enough. Matt, you've been how many years in a row now?
Everyone.
Which is how many?
This is our 7th year.
Something like that. So 7. So it's a really good time. If you have any questions about either of those things, let us know. Sorry to sidetrack us a bit, but I want to make sure now we're getting close so that people know that it's coming up.
Also, if your employer is going to buy, get the expensive ticket because it helps us out.
Because we also do things like diversity scholarships and stuff like that. So if people can't go, then the extra funds are left over from employer purchases and stuff like that help other people go. So if you have any questions about the conference, you can ask Matt or I. Sorry, Joe.
I was just gonna say the Balmer Peak Hackathon was really awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
What can you talk a little about what the Balmer Peak Hackathon is?
Is anyone familiar with Balmer Peak? Well, certain amount of alcohol will get you to back productivity. So there's a hackathon all around campus, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah, exactly. So Balmer, who's from I think Microsoft, had said that people peak when they have like up to 2 or 3 drinks, like peak productivity, and from there it really drops off sharply. So it's become known in industry as the Balmer Peak. And so Develop Denver, the second day, starting at about I think it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, up until closing ceremonies at like 5, the Balmer Peak Hackathon starts, where teams get together with some loosely thrown together topic, and then every time you push a commit, you have to take a drink.
Or test.
Or do anything, really. It's
Literally.
So by the end,
If you do something other than coding.
yeah, you have to take a drink.
You gotta take a
And
drink.
so it's basically, it's like a hackathon drinking game. And by the end of it, everybody that walks in is good and wasted. It's a very, so it's a really great way to kick off closing ceremonies. You have all these teams come up. They've all been just like drinking together and coding together. And like half of them don't even work because they've gotten so drunk it doesn't run anymore. And it's a really fun energy to kick off closing ceremonies. It's a very good time.
Some teams do have a PDD, so programming designated driver.
Oh, yeah.
There's
But
a few
anyways.
people that don't drink during it, but they still code through it, and those are the people usually carrying them.
Right. It is. I'm so glad you brought that up. Develop Denver is unlike any other conference that you might go to. It is very, cool, and it's all people that you keep running into in town. If you're going to go to one conference this year, I highly recommend it. So if you have any questions about it, let us know. But going back to what brought us here, if you want to give a talk, please let us know as well.
Actually, side note, just looking at this just made me realize like kind of the dativeness of this comic. Who knows or has ever used Windows ME? Do you remember how bad it was? Yeah,
Well, I've heard of that. Talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. Sweet.
Cool. All right, well, getting our drink, slice of pizza while we switch it out for Kylie. Woo!
Oh, hello.
Cool. It's like that.
Oh, nice, thank you.
Even from the song or
Someone told me the other day, they're like, it's the new Vegan. I've never watched. That's like,
I don't think so. I know a lot of people have never. I don't think it's not time to do it.
well, everyone's telling me how terrible it is right now. I'm like, so I'm glad I didn't invest in it.
You put any energy, emotional energy, particularly to the characters of that show, you're pissed off. It wasn't even that they died, it was just like their stories and then
Yeah, no, people were like, yeah, dragon's called Dragon.
Drogon.
Drogon.
Yeah.
Do you want a microphone?
Yeah.
It's up to you. I mean, it's not, it takes 2 seconds to set up.
I have more problems with them than I ever had.
I don't disagree.
Site day, I had one slipping down my hair, and then everyone in the recording said, "Why did she touch her head so much? She's touching her hair." I'm like, "There's the microphone's down here."
Whoops.
Yeah. So. Oh. Hi.
It's okay. Just a live stream.
Hello. I'm just standing here.
Yeah. You go ahead and hook up. Well, you can hook in HDMI or yeah. This is all new to me. When they asked me what projector to buy, I'm like, oh, I have Google. And I was like, that one. So I had to scale mine, so I'm not sure if it's working.
Yeah, it's not.
You can advance space.
How do you say?
I'm a new dictator, executor, right? So we have the export words, right into DenverScript, so I'm going definitely a reflection.
All right, we're gonna get started.
I'm glad that we took this very seriously.
Kylie Stewart, everyone.
Hello, I am Kylie. I work as a software engineer at Formidable. We are an open source organization as well as a JavaScript consultancy based out of Seattle with a very large growing office here in Denver. This is our new logo. We used to be just like a ambiguous Formidable, we called it. If you recognize the old logo, this is our new one. Get used to it. Anyway, React to React Native, how hard could it be? The goal of this talk is really just to highlight the differences between the browser and native application, and then some of the main focal points you'll have in trying to create a native application that mimics your browser app. They're very different. Oh, that's not what was supposed to happen. This was written in Spectacle. Spectacle is a presentation software that is part of our open source lineup here. I maintain it, so please don't come at me too much with the bugs. It's doing it again. So it's caching to the latest router, which is not very helpful. So I'm just going to open a new page and hope that this one refreshes.
Before comes before after. So you're
Before, yeah, before it was garbage, and now no.
Wait for it.
Oh, this is a neat one.
There we go.
Yay! Okay, so goal of the talk is really just to highlight the main differences between the two. But I'll start with the easy question, which is what is React? So React is defined as a user interface library that's totally usable with JavaScript. So you're using JavaScript to actually define these user interfaces instead of actually plugging into a new framework. So why would you use React? Main focal point is definitely going to be that JavaScript. It's a lot easier to use when you're just writing JSX, which is JavaScript in line with your components. Second part is it's really hard to work around the DOM. So the React kind of presents you this virtual DOM, which is a lot easier to manipulate and affect, especially when you're using JavaScript. So it's a lot easier syntax for developers to understand, particularly if you're familiar with JavaScript, which I'm assuming everyone in this room is at least aware of it. And then finally, component interfaces. You can define the state and props that are coming and going from your component at any given time. So this is another big feature of React. You actually have these components that you can look at and analyze, look at the interface, understand what's being passed in and what's internal to the component. And that's another main feature of React and why people use it so much. So those are the basics of why React is kind of a big thing. So what is React Native? React Native is really just the native aspect of React. If you wanted to build an iPhone application or an Android application or anything that's going into an app store, React Native is going to be your focal point. It's React, but it's very different. And so my goal is really to highlight the differences in this talk. When developing a React Native application, you're going to run into a few roadblocks, a few major challenges that are kind of going to hinge the architecture of your entire app. So those are the ones I'm going to cover here. So our starting point is going to be this very simple to-do app. The GIF is sped up because compression, but you can get the point of what's going on. Obviously, if you complete a thing, it turns green. and you can delete it entirely. So very basic application we're going to try to port into React Native. So can you just copy and paste the code? I've actually heard this question before. No, you really can't. A lot of the things are different. Again, I'm going to go into the details of what those differences are. But this is kind of what that code looks like when you copy and paste it over. Nothing's working the way you want it to, and then it has, I might have stepped on something.
No, it's
Cool. So obviously none of the actions are actually taking action. Nothing's being completed, nothing's being deleted. And I can't even add a new to do if I wanted to, because that input box is inaccessible. So no, you firmly cannot copy and paste the code. So the first challenge is very easily going to be that API. When you're writing just JavaScript in React, you are using a lot of the HTML elements that you're very familiar with. In the API of React Native, you're actually going to be using very named components that are rendering things to your screen. The reason for this is the native bindings. Because you're working in a native environment, React Native strives to actually develop these components that are easier to work within that will then render to your native application. While React is just very simple, HTML happens in the browser, very, very simple. So I think the biggest differences that you can notice here, obviously H1, header, key, div, very recognizable. You have views, scroll views, somehow wrapped in another view, and these are all very defining to what that component is doing. So the view, you're seeing it on the screen. The scroll view means you can actually scroll through what you're viewing on the screen. I think the biggest, that might highlight, honestly, what you're getting into when you try to port over a React app to a React Native app. You have components that are actually defining whether it's scrollable or not. That's something that just happens in the browser for us. It's not something we really have to work around. If you're thinking about overflow content, you kind of have to restructure the way you're designing the entire application, the components you're rendering, and everything all the way down to this very minimal scroll view. So it gets a lot more complicated, and the API is very different. I think those are kind of the important things to highlight just walking into a new React Native project. Obviously, you can work around it. You'll get familiar with the syntax. Let's move into the next problem. So styling. You've got things where you want them to be. They don't look the way they might have looked in your browser application. So let's say we're starting with this browser app here. Very simple. Welcome to React. Obviously, use just create React app, and you have a little blob of text. Not a lot going on, but can't really copy and paste this over. So this is all of the code, not very clearly defined, that it took to render just those two blocks. A whole lot of mess, it's fine. So after, we want to have this header, and we want to have, here's the rest of my content. The header is filling up to the top of the page. That's a huge part of where styling is kind of going to fall short. A lot of the native styling that'll come out of these native elements given to you by React Native. I'm going to say native 8 more times. The styling that is tied into the components is all part of the library. You end up kind of hacking around it quite a bit, trying to get different views and actually styling those views, or there are libraries you can use for these components. Again, you're dealing with native styling on each individual device. So it's not always going to look the same across the board. It's even more of a variety than your average browser lineup. I mean, things will break in IE and work in Chrome, but in this, you could have an entirely different scope of styles or rendering. And that's all part of React Native, the beauty of working on all these devices. So another challenge that you will probably run into, navigation. It's just not the same as a React Router DOM or a number of browser navigation tools that you might have ever used. There are a few different ways to navigate around an app. Again, sorry the GIFs are so sped up. I tried to compress them so they'd actually deploy and they get really fast. So one sample of a navigation tool is going to be this tab navigator. I'm sure you've seen this lineup in an app before, where obviously you're toggling between different views. Sometimes it's way more, sometimes you have more view, and you can go into your settings. But this tab navigator is a very clearly defined type of navigation for your app. You're not just going to hit a new endpoint with that new string that you wanted to get to for a sign-in or what have you. You're going to need to render this very different kind of And then the navigator is what's going to get you to each of those screens. So you kind of pass those screens in as components, which does happen in a number of navigators in React, but I would say considering the style and approach of your navigator is going to be a very different decision when you're developing a native application. So your tab navigator, it's another sample of a navigator, and you can see how very different these two are. The stack navigator almost layers each screen on top of the stack. So you'll have to back out to get back to the original screen. Again, a big design and architectural decision for your entire app UI. It's going to change the way the user interacts with everything if you're going through a step-by-step process instead of navigating through tabs. I think this really highlights the biggest differences. In general, the browser, you can kind of define what menu you want, kind of navigation you want. If you want to make it easy for a user to route to every of the many routes that you have, or if you want to make it a little bit simpler to navigate around and just give them a little hamburger to click. These are larger decisions to be made in a native application, probably just because that user interface is so much smaller. So each position on the screen is going to have high value when you only work with that much of the screen. Another challenge, the environment. I know environments are finicky in nearly every application that you're ever going to work in. I found them extremely difficult in React Native. There is kind of this typical pattern of starting your config on start. I know that's happening in a lot of React applications, but in React Native, it's a necessity. It's not really a choice. So before, maybe you used .env, there are a number of things, but just imagine this config callback is actually your own callback. Maybe you have your config that's passing in all those environment variables upon deploy. You can very easily do that in React. In React Native, I usually use this React Native config object, which is its own library, kind of hard to work around. But you end up doing a lot of your config abstracted away. So you can do things on start, but I end up finding that you have very different build processes for dev and prod. It's not as easy to just flag that. So the environment is a lot more difficult to configure, and it's very dependent on that app starting up. Instead of having the various points of entry that you might have in the browser, the app typically just has the one main entry, where typically if you have off or some other things that are going to vary the user experience every time they open it, those are things that need to be configured before the app charges on your Android before it actually spins up. So the configuration of your environment is a little more difficult than I found to be in the browser. But to go on about React Native in the future, I think the biggest gripe about React Native in general is that people say it's not well maintained, people say the API changes all the time, and people say the docs are kind of a nightmare. I'd say most of those are true. The docs are really difficult to work around. They're not very straightforward. And just the feeling you kind of get off of the repository is that it's Facebook's last priority and not their first. I think React has a really great ecosystem built around it, but React Native is where a lot of people fall off because it's just not well maintained, it's not well documented, and the open source team in general has been really slow to merge PRs and really slow to kind of check out new routes for their API. So it's been harder to actually get things working, honestly. So they laid out at the beginning of this year a very aggressive roadmap, and there are a lot of things coming up to change. They are prioritizing a stable API instead of switching those up on you constantly, and they are prioritizing a healthy repository, which comes in hand with excellent documentation, if you ask me. But they want people to feel better about contributing to React Native, and they want people to feel like that API is not going to change so much that they can't build a production app around it. So the roadmap and the future for React Native, I think, looks a lot better than anything we've dealt with thus far. I know for the last 3 years, 2 years, 2.5, I've been trying React Native. I definitely started as a full junior thinking I could just build a mobile app and realized how hard it was. Those challenges have kind of persisted, and hopefully with the future of React Native, we're going to get a lot of those things squashed in the near future. But it is important to note, and you can look at their wiki itself to see kind of what their own words are about this. It's going to get better. It's not going to be quite as rough as it has been. So that might have been shorter than your long talk, but thank you. I am Kylie. Does anyone have any questions?
What are the difference in like kind of the debugging tools?
They're different. I'd say there are a lot more for React than there are for React Native. You end up working around some interesting breakpoints, I'd say. A lot of the navigation has been the root of my problem, debugging a React Native app, and I haven't found as many tools as effective as, say, the dev tools in Chrome for React. Personally, I haven't found a great strategy beyond console logging everything, but I know that in general, the libraries that exist for debugging haven't been fully fleshed out. Mostly that varying API has been kind of hard to work around.
You mentioned the production builds and dev builds. And like production of images, those type of things. It's like amplified, and it does code annihilation and stuff. But what's a production React Native build?
You're dealing with a lot of native bindings. So in general, I find it's harder to debug a prompt build. I learned Kotlin, for example, to work on my first Iron project with React Native, just because there's so many native bindings that aren't really made simple with React Native. So in the production builds in general, I haven't had a good time debugging them. I can't really speak specifically to what that build system looks like or how it differs from the dev, but I know that it's dramatic.
Native from not JavaScript.
It's just very painful. I mean, and then the things you're going to get from like the integrated debugger or the integrated you can render out that specific mobile view. You can pick out, the pixel and then debug that view in the browser. There are still a number of things that don't catch in the browser that will catch on native from what I've learned. So it hasn't been fun. It's good. It's getting better. I swear, this is an optimistic talker. Yes.
So you mentioned a lot of the challenges. What do you like the most about what you've worked with React Native so far?
There is still the possibility of having shareable components. I've worked in a couple of teams where they've had a shared component directory that are both native compatible and browser compatible. I think that's really what it might boil down to. If you have a very full-fledged browser app built in React and you were trying to venture into mobile without just changing your views in the browser, it's a little bit simpler. But again, if you haven't been thinking native the whole time, you're going to kind of have to work through backwards compatibility for those shareable components. It's nice for a massive code base, I would say.
And how do you do that? Because like what you showed before, like given that like
The views
it's like
themselves.
a div is essentially a view, right?
Yeah.
And they have other like things that are somewhat the same. So how do you like transpile one to the other?
Webpack.
Oh, Webpack is it for you?
Yeah, Webpack does some things for you. There's still going to be a lot of hacking around in general, but Webpack has been kind of the crux of making this easier.
Oh, cool. And does it also take the CSS and turn it into the object-based styles?
I want to say yes, just because I haven't run into as many of those backwards compatibility issues, but I don't feel confident in that answer.
Cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about that.
It's probably dependent on the project you're working on, but I was just curious how much customization after you built like a basic prototypal React Native app do you have to do because I have very little experience with it, per iOS or per Android. Like how much do you have to get in?
Those are a little bit easier. React Native does make an effort to make Android and iOS kind of a similar experience for the developer. So it's a lot less painful than it might be in the browser. In general, there are a lot of tools that get you to be very compatible across the board, while I never find the correct solution for Internet Explorer and browser for myself. So
Right.
yeah, and I would say React Native is making a very clear effort to make that easy. I've still had to add some specific things. I'm trying to think what those lines might be, but I've had to add some things to my Webpack and my package.json, honestly, for the deployments to make sure that it's actually working between the two the way I expect it to. But it is easier.
A cool point to what you were saying is like, whereas the React Native project takes you 90% of the way there, they also do have the option of things where they let you like be introspective on like what is the operating system that's using it, and then you can do like if blocks, do different things based on what you've run into on quirks of that platform.
Which is a lot easier than kind of factoring in that corner case for yourself in any other capacity. They're trying. Yes.
So I remember when this came out, and the first thought I had was coming from the only mobile work I've ever done was PhoneGap.
Oh yeah.
which you made a web application and it was a web view layer. That's all it was. Can you just explain like how React Native is totally different from that? Because the first time I heard it, it was like web view. Yeah.
They're actually interacting with the native binding, which I think is the biggest point. There are native bindings part of the package, and then if you really want to get advanced in making a really beautiful production application, learning a native language is going to help you get there. Kotlin was what we learned, and I think what we in general use at Formidable when we're trying to work on a native application. But I know there are a number of other languages you can learn to kind of make that simpler. But React Native is kind of putting the native development first. So it's actually trying to interact with the device and not the browser and making that web view, like you said.
That's a huge difference, right? Because you really are, at the end of the day, it truly is a native app. Like, it is indiscernible, like, from one to the other. The phone doesn't know the difference, right? Whereas, like, in PhoneGap, it's literally just, like, getting what hooks that it can and literally bridging the gap for you between the native thing and then just rendering pages, really like a web browser that looks like an app, whereas React Native, it's truly a native app on the phone.
You have a lot more access to things that are native to the phone, just as a result. Instead of just doing what might be accessible to the browser, you can actually access parts of the phone and use it that way. Yes.
Have you or anyone been able to convince a mobile dev to use React Native without them looking like they want to strangle?
Hard no.
Yep, so far I'm 0 for 0 right now.
Yeah, we're usually walking into
Sorry, 0 out of 0.
0 for 0. I all these times.
You haven't failed yet.
It's been a long fucking day, sorry.
It's another hard day here to
Yeah. No. Firm no. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, sorry, we only have one talk tonight, but it was an awesome talk. Thank you, Kylie, for coming to speak. We still have some more beer at Pizza, so feel free to stick around, nerd out, drink, eat, or, whatever you want to do. Drink and be merry.
Those of you who did raise your hand for JavaScript land stuff, if you want to come to the front, we'll do the giveaways for that. Thanks, guys.